Hi there, my name's Ross Crawford and welcome to the Redditch Standard podcast. Today we're joined by, as our guest, Councillor Clive Rickhards, the former chairman of Warwickshire County Council and County Councillor for the Studley Division in Warwickshire. Hi there, Clive.
Hello there.
We're also joined by Abby Cook, who's here on work experience with us. She's a graduate from Liverpool University and she's learning all about journalism. Hello there, Abby.
Hello.
And of course, we've got Claire doing all our leisure and our sound and everything else. Clive, the Redditch Eastern Gateway seems to be dominating things, and you're on the steering group, aren't you, of the Gateway?
Yes, although I have to say I came onto the steering group quite late, and frankly, I've never invited to a meeting. I was waiting many months, but eventually proposals in relation to traffic diversion went to the planning committee in Stratford, but I had no part in that.
Yeah, so what's the latest on the Gateway then? What's the situation?
Well, as far as we're concerned in Studley, of course, we're interested in that whole question of how far traffic will be diverted from the area. And as far as I can see, it really won't be, because although the automatic number recognition system will hopefully divert some traffic away from the A435. There's still masses of traffic which obviously isn't registered at the Eastern Gateway, which will still be coming through Studley, and presumably some car traffic will be engendered by workers at the Eastern Gateway site will come down that way as well. So that number recognition system, won't cover that sort of traffic. And, I believe there are other developments possible in the Redditch area.
But that's right. I mean, there's talk of, Stratford wants to route a degree of the traffic, southbound traffic, through Redditch, doesn't it?
But also through part of Studley Parish. I mean, that traffic will still come down from the Crabs Cross Island, down the Slough, Bromsgrove Road, in Studley. And certainly, my constituents who live down there are not very pleased about it.
Well, that's right, because the traffic already queues well back at rush hour time at Spernell, doesn't it?
Yes, and also the Crabs Cross Island gets very congested as well, yeah.
What's to be done about it? I mean, I've been to meetings it was at Mappleborough Primary School, wasn't it? And there were officers from Warwickshire County Council there, highways officers, and talking about what's possible. What's possible now?
I mean, I think right from the start, the wrong approach, almost literally the wrong approach, was made to it, in so much as not enough attention was made to the way traffic could be channelled up to the motorway system, channel north rather than south. And there seems to have been very little attempt to do that.
Yeah, and, I mean, I travel up and down the A435 quite regularly, and they're saying that the work on the Junction 3, isn't it? Is going to be completed by the end of the year. I mean, they've done some huge amounts of work there so they're obviously anticipating a lot of traffic heading up there.
Yeah, but the ANPR system that I just mentioned, it's really developed just to deal with that traffic that's going to go to the south.
Yeah.
But as I say, the 20-odd thousand vehicles a day that currently come through Studley, obviously they don't include very little of that traffic which will be engendered by the Eastern Gateway.
Yeah. And I suppose many would say that the Redditch road system, it's better equipped, really, isn't it, to deal with a large volume of traffic?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are certain roads along that route that you could say, I mean, they're certainly reasonably wide, but then, once you get to that Crabs Cross Island, then you're trying to push a lot of traffic into a system that I don't think will take it.
Yeah, and I suppose that you've talked about the major roads network and any money that might be coming in the future to alleviate the Crabscroft Island and Spurnall junction, that's a long way down the line, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. And also, I had to try and argue at Warwickshire for the A435 to be moved a little bit further up the list of priorities. And I'm hopeful that I've been persuasive in that respect. But, that matter hasn't quite been resolved yet. Should be fairly soon. But then, as you say, it'll be years, if there is any action in relation to, I don't know, mini bypasses or whatever is envisaged, that should take quite a few years.
Yeah.
Meantime, the traffic builds up.
And meantime, as I think we said earlier, I mean, the Eastern Gateway, it's cut and dry, isn't it?
It would seem now that, that's all determined.
Yeah.
And I look back, the great sadness from a few years ago, when, I and many others are protesting about Stratford District Council giving up its green belt effectively in the Wynyates Triangle area, and predicted that some of these effects we're discussing today would happen. Yeah. And I take no joy in saying I told you so.
Yeah.
I really don't. But, I think a lot of those things should have been envisaged when that unfortunate action was taken.
Yes, indeed. And I know you also want to talk about neighbourhood plans.
Oh, yes, I am involved in Studley on the neighbourhood plan.
The protection that neighbourhood plans can offer, not just villages like Studley, but also areas of Redditch like Webb Heath or Wynyates Green or wherever.
Oh, yeah, I don't think a lot of people realise that neighbourhood plans can apply to quite small areas. I think one of the early ones, for instance, was in London in Holland Park, which is a relatively small area, but, was enthusiastically pursued by some quite influential people. Although it was, only a small part of its borough, I think it's Kensington, nevertheless, they produced a plan that eventually had a great deal of influence on, possible housing developments and resisting them and so on. So I think it must be stressed that quite small areas can develop their neighbourhood plans.
So what sort of protection does a neighbourhood plan offer?
It gives an extra substantial set of reasons for resisting certain housing or industrial developments. But of course, it also requires positive statements about housing supply, for instance. So it's not all negative by any means. But certainly, thinking about Studley again, it gives hope that the neighbourhood plan can shore up what is very much the local consensus that the gap between Redditch and Studley should be maintained, and that green belt in other parts of the environment of Studley should be protected.
Well, that's right. So I think that's why Redditch is expanding towards where Abby lives in Webb Heath, rather than east towards Redditch, towards Studley even.
Yeah, or south, really.
Or south, southeast, shall we say.
To some extent east as well, yeah. But, obviously that doesn't necessarily affect the argument that we in Studley have for keeping that separation. And also protecting other valuable environmental features. For instance, I'm personally trying to work on proposals that will go into the neighbourhood plan on watercourses. And as you know, the River Arrow flows right through Studley in a number of tributary brooks and so on. Yeah. And so there's Warwickshire have clear evidence of the existence of floodplains, flood risk plains around in the environment of the River Arrow. I'm really keen that we can make really strong statements to prevent various housing, perhaps other developments on that floodplain, because that would be quite inappropriate.
Well, that's right. And also the River Arrow in Redditch. I mean, there's going to be some major works done on the river in the town itself. mainly removing the weirs and making the river flow a bit more naturally, because it tends to shoot through the town, through the middle of Redditch, and flows straight into the floodplain of Studley, really.
Well, that seems on the surface to be a sensible thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I wouldn't presume to speak for Redditch.
No. Although I was at a meeting where they were going to. It's because people have drowned, really, at those weirs in Redditch, and they've been trying to make them safer. And the idea is to alter the water course by dealing with the river bed, and instead of having the weirs to slow it down, to make the bed more undulating, so that it slows it down from beneath rather than above. That's what I gather, anyway. That's what I gather. It's all theory, I guess. And but they are due to start work on that. Clive, that's been great speaking to you. And any more on neighbourhood plans?
Not currently. It's just in Studley, it's various groups are working on different aspects. Like there's a group working on the economy, basically. Yeah. And encouragement of business and so on, amenities, etc. And very shortly, we hope to bring all the proposals that those committees have agreed and thrash them out in one steering group, to pull the thing together. And we hope, that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shortly.
And for all those communities out there in Redditch, in Wynyates Green and Wynyates, we know that this is outside Redditch. Of course, we know that Alvechurch Parish Council, they've got themselves a neighbourhood plan. They're very pleased with it. They've got the protection provided by a neighbourhood plan, and there are all these areas in Redditch that could perhaps benefit from the action
Certainly.
that Studley is taking.
I very much think so. I'm a big fan of neighbourhood plans, actually. I don't think they've been utilised enough in the planning system. But certainly, I think they can provide a strong defence. They won't, however, necessarily prevent certain developments, but I think they do provide stronger arguments.
Yes, for sight lines and what the buildings look like, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Clive, I know you're going to stick around because we're going to talk about some news, and we're going to bring in Abby on one of those issues. But first of all, we're going to cut to Claire, who's got all our entertainment. She's scribbling away there on a piece of paper. But over to you, Claire.
For all the things to do and see this week, it's Claire Bullivant with this week's What's On Guide.
Thanks, Ross. Yes, looking through this weekend, loads of things to see and do across the region. Remember, Heritage Open Days are going on at the moment, right up until September the 22nd. Basically, every September, some 40,000 volunteers across England organise thousands and thousands of events to celebrate our fantastic history and culture. So it's a chance to see hidden places and try out new experiences, all of which are totally free of charge to explore during this period. For example, on Saturday, there's a Heritage Open Day Festival happening at St Stephen's Church on the Church Green in Redditch, celebrating its heritage, people, community and history. There's going to be loads going on there, 10:30 a.m. until 4 p.m. There's also a Heritage Open Day on Saturday at Hanbury Hall, where you can explore and relax in the grounds, sit peacefully in the orchards, join a guided walk in the park, or explore more of Hanbury with the artist, the gardener and the Queen, they tell me. So pop along there to find out what that's all about, 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturday. And remember, it's all totally free. So there are literally thousands of these places and museums and historical houses and churches and all sorts opening their doors for free, and some seriously amazing places to boot. So do go and explore this weekend, and you can find out where to go to by going onto the website, which is heritageopendays.org.uk, and hopefully you'll be able to find some options for you there, and it'll be a great opportunity. Also on Saturday, Now, this sounds fun. It's Sustrans, a lead bike ride happening at Arrow Valley Park for beginners and families. It's totally free of charge. Just meet at the Arrow Valley Park at 10:30 a.m. with your bike, your helmet and suitable clothing and equipment for the weather. You can find out all the details on their website, which is sustrans.org.uk. There's also a craft fair operated by Burton Gertz Markets happening on Saturday in the Kingfisher Shopping Centre, 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. there. That's going to be in its usual spot opposite Debenhams. And also on Saturday, the 14th of September, is the Tidy Big Show happening. I love the Tidy Big Show. B63AH is the postcode for your sat-nav. They tell us once again there's going to be the usual fruit, vegetable and flower shows with an auction of all the produce at the end. Also the usual white elephant, plants, cakes, books, tombola, prize draw and more. It's a really fun, family-friendly community event. Do try and pop along there. It all starts and kicks off there at 1:30 p.m. Then in the evening, the Soul Legends are on at the Palace Theatre. That promises to be a fantastic show if you love your soul music. And another event I really want to go to is the 60s Retro Night happening at the Oust House in Redditch. That's on Saturday night too, 8 p.m. start there. Then moving on to Sunday, the 15th of September. Remember, it's the Studley Car Boot Sale, and gates open there at 6 a.m. studleycarbootsale.co.uk for all the information. I can't believe we've only got like 3 or 4 left this summer before it all closes up again and reopens next year. So do make the most of it. I love the Studley Car Boot Sale. There's also Big Fest Music Festival happening in Tardybig this weekend. Try and head along to that. That always is a lot of fun. And there are loads of these Heritage Open Days going on. Just to mention a couple for this Sunday. One is at the Ulster War Memorial Town Hall. Visitors can enjoy the exhibition they're putting on there, showing the history and development of the town hall over 400 years. There are lots of guided free tours on offer, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. there. We've also got the Globe House in Ulster. That's open, totally free of charge, 12 noon until 4 p.m. on Sunday. And there's also a fantastic Heritage Open Day going on Sunday at Forge Mill Needle Museum. 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. there. And they've got attractions for the day there, including motorbikes from the Royal Enfield Owners Club. They've got an exhibition from Redditch Local History Society. There's going to be displays by Scour Arts. Sounds like a really fun day, so do try and get yourself there. And remember, again, I can't say it enough, it's all totally free stuff, so do make the most of it. Then on Sunday night, don't forget, it's Alan's Charity Quiz Night at the Bell Inn in Aswood Bank, 9 p.m. start there. And a couple of events for you next week. On Tuesday, the 16th of September, Sindhu V is here in Redditch at the Palace Theatre. She's an Edinburgh Comedy Award Best Newcomer nominee, and this is her critically acclaimed show, Sandhog. It's supposed to be amazing. She's hilarious. So if you love your comedy, do get your tickets for that. Then on Wednesday, the 18th of September, there's an open singing event with the Ulster Male Voice Choir happening at the Jubilee Centre in Ulster, 7:30 p.m. there. So if you fancy joining that spectacular choir, do go along. They're after new members, and they were saying to us on a recent podcast that they really like to have some more young voices. So yeah, if you're a young man who's got a good singing voice, do get yourself along, and what a lovely thing to do and join. And also, don't forget to get your tickets for Wednesday the 18th for Rock for Heroes. That's happening at the Palace Theatre, and it's going to be fantastic. And I hear the tickets are going quickly, so if you want to go, get your tickets now. Have a lovely week, everyone. And remember, if you have an event going on, tell us so we can tell everybody. Back to you, Ross.
You're listening to the Redditch Standard podcast because you have impeccable taste.
Hi there, we're back with Clive Rickhards and with Abby, our work experience girl, all the way from Liverpool, although Liverpool University, you live in Webb Heath, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and thanks to Claire for everything that's been going on this weekend. And it is a packed programme at the certainly at the Palace Theatre. They're chock-a-block with shows. Clive, thanks for sticking around. Tudor Grange High School, I don't know if you're aware, Tudor Grange High School, formerly Kingsley, formerly Lees, they're consulting on reverting back to the 3-tier education system. And I know you're a former teacher yourself, aren't you?
That's true, yeah.
You've got experience of the 3-tier system.
Yes, at one time in the 1980s, I taught in North Bromsgrove High School, and that was very much fed through that 3-tier system, and people who were in the first year there were in fact what we now refer to as year 9s. And I've got to say, my experience of that school was really good, and I felt at the time that was working well.
Yes,
but I know other people have different experiences.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'm a product of the 2-tier system. 2-tier
Me too.
is, it's year 1 to year 6, and then year 7 to whenever you leave school, whether it's at 16 or in sixth form. Whereas 3-tier is infant school to year 4, then middle school to year 9.
No, I think it's
year 8.
Junior schools were to 8, and then middle school.
Just proving I know nothing about the 3-tier system here. And then on to whenever you leave school, whether it's at the sixth form or at 16. And it's quite interesting that Tudor Grange, they experimented with the 2-tier system. They more or less drove a horse and cart through the Redditch education system. And it forced a lot of schools, and I know, Abby, you're a product of St. Augustine's, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
And it forced a lot of schools to form their own little protective pyramids just to make sure they kept their pupil numbers up. And Tudor Grange, unfortunately, the parents voted with their feet, and they suffered a massive drop in year 7 and year 9 intake, to the extent that I think for 3 years they didn't have a year 7 intake, which is extraordinary. So they're returning to the 3-tier system, which, from all your accounts, Clive, is...
It certainly seemed to work, from my perspective as a teacher in North Bromsgrove, but that's the only experience I had of that system.
Yeah, well, who knows? It looks like Tudor Grange are going back to it. They're also consulting on revamping the Kingsley Swimming Pool and Sports Centre, which I think is good news for everyone. And
yes, that will please a lot of people in Studley, of course. It's
absolutely.
only just across the border. I hope we'll be allowed to use it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, me too, actually. It's closer to Studley than in many parts of Redditch, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also on expanding their highly successful autism section as well, which is great news.
It's brilliant.
Moving on, Redditch, I nearly said Studley. Redditch Borough Council has been accused of not being green enough, that there's just too much hot air and not enough action by the Borough Council on declaring a climate emergency and getting on and actually getting something down and done on greening the environment and making Redditch Borough Council a bit greener. Now, Clive, you've got experience of this from your time at Warwickshire County Council, because they debated climate emergency quite recently, didn't they?
Yes, we did. And we did adopt, insofar as it goes, a climate emergency motion, which had, I think was unanimous. It certainly, across party support. However, there's now a working group which is tasked with coming up with some specific proposals, some of which might be in relation to, say, pollution along certain roads and et cetera, et cetera. We await their proposals. But certainly in principle, I'm very much in favour of local authorities taking some action where they can.
Yeah, and Abby, the voice of youth on today's podcast. I mean, is enough being done to save the planet?
I don't think so, but I think our generation, the younger generation, are definitely having more of an input in it. Because as a university graduate, there's a lot of societies and things like that dedicated to the cause. So I think people are becoming a lot more aware of it, and the younger generation are doing their bit. Or trying to, at least.
What would you like, Redditch? What would you like to see Redditch Borough Council do?
Probably keep the green spaces as much as they can. Try not to build too much on it. Things like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot the council could do with, just their fleet. The use of their vehicles, and they could go a lot greener there. I reckon, and. Yeah,
I agree.
Maybe encouraging more electric cars usage.
Yeah. More walking and cycling. Yeah, more bus travel. It'd be great if Diamond buses could go electric. I quite fancy trolley buses. You know, the ones with the electric cables overhead. I think that'd be great.
I remember them in Birmingham. I'm so old.
But why not? Why not turn back the clock? And I think it'd be cheaper to run than trams, and just get some trolley buses. And well, to finish off with, we're going to talk about Mission Morogoro. Mission Morogoro is a Redditch charity which is doing great work out in Tanzania, in rural parts of Tanzania. And what they do is they help an NGO, a non-government organisation out in Tanzania, to provide fresh drinking water, sanitation and hygiene out in rural parts of Africa. And they recently held a football tournament. And the winners of that football tournament, they're called Stand, they're interested in, they're not just interested, they're very keen in setting up links with a football club in the Studley area, the Redditch area, anywhere around here, Church, just to forge links across the ocean. And Clive, you revealed to us earlier that you did a trial for Aston Villa when you were a nipper.
Even though I have to confess to being in Birmingham City. But at 16 I did have trials at the Villa, yes. Wasn't quite good enough. But I'm a football man. So
you're a football man. And
I was bought football boots at the age of 4 and I went straight to bed with them. I wouldn't take them off.
As we've discussed, I'm more rugby, but I think, forging links with third world countries, with other people, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Extremely important, and it's extremely important in the midst of all this debate about Brexit and very much centred on Europe, that we remember that 2/3 of the world is underdeveloped, if I can use that blanket term. There's a great deal of poverty and hunger in this world that young people should be aware of, and I think mostly are aware of, thankfully through teachers who very much take the responsibility of communicating that message. It's so important that we treat the world as one.
Yeah, and well, that's true enough. And of course, Redditch already has links with parts of Tanzania, with Mtwara, which is its twin town. But I think it's a great idea that if we could get a football club in this area to do fundraisers. I mean, I've spoken to the people from Mission Morogoro. They don't want donations of football boots and nets, etc., because they've got to carry it all out there. It's got to be freighted out. But any fundraisers that could be held to provide football kit for them, that they could take the money out. They can produce proof that the money has been well spent. That'd be pretty good.
I'll mention it at the Studley Sports and Social Club, maybe.
Yeah, I think so, and hopefully any club listening to what we're saying, listening to the podcast, they
quite a lot of clubs in Redditch, aren't there? Yeah,
there are loads of clubs in Redditch, and I think it'd be a fantastic. You could discover the next, the next talent out there in
the next Eusebio.
The next Eusebio,
I don't know
yes.
whether everybody will recognise that now.
Well, I hope so. I remember Eusebio. Do you know?
I do, yeah.
You know him.
I do.
Thank goodness. Claire's shaking her head.
Yeah, he's a great player for Portugal, but of African origins. Yeah.
Fantastic. Although I always remember Celtic winning the European Cup.
Oh, yes.
Let's have a mention for Celtic. 1967, first British club to win the European Cup.
Yeah.
But
Stephen Chalmers scoring the winning goal.
I know.
And what was my mother's name? Chalmers. I must be related.
Yeah, good old Stevie Chalmers. I used to have his picture on my wall. But, hey, I'm developing my Scottish accent again. Clive, thanks for coming in. You've been a fantastic guest. You too, Abby. Thanks for all your contribution. And of course, to Claire, who's once again steered us through this show and who's provided us with all our entertainment news as well. My name's Ross Crawford. You've been listening to the Redditch Standard podcast. You can contact me at editor@redditchstandard.co.uk or at ross.crawford@bullivantmedia.com. You can call me on 01527 588 697, and don't forget to check out all your news at www.redditchstandard.co.uk. Thanks for listening.